You already know the word even if you do not say it. Dissatisfaction. That itch under the skin when nothing is wrong, and yet nothing is right. The socket of your life is full, and still the lamp flickers. You get the job, and the mind invents a new vacancy. You fall in love, and the heart drafts a list of contingencies. You sit down to rest, and the body remembers a debt it cannot name. Call it Dukkha, if you like the old names. Call it the drag of existence, if you prefer plain speech. It is the pressure you carry on good days, and the storm that finds you on bad ones. It is baked into a world where every sweet thing ripens toward rot, and every plan picks up rust the moment you lay it on a table. You are not defective for feeling it. You are honest. Look closely. The disquiet is not only pain. It is the friction between wanting and what is. It is the hairline crack between the picture in your head and the room you inhabit. It is how your appetites rush forward faster than the world can supply. The mind promises permanence to the things you love and promises distance from the things you fear. The promises are counterfeit. They feel like currency until the moment you try to spend them. That is when you learn the first law of your days. Nothing you can grip holds still for long. The cup you prize will chip. The face you adore will alter. The mood that rescued you last Thursday will refuse your call on Monday. You do not need a monastery to witness this. You need a morning. What are you tempted to do with this knowledge? You try 3 roads. First, you clutch tighter. If it hurts when things change, you attempt to prevent change. You schedule affection. You laminate identity. You stack rules like sandbags against a tide. Second, you harden. If desire disappoints, you swear off desire. You starve the heart and congratulate yourself for becoming rational. Third, you distract. If life pinches, you build an orchestra of noise and you conduct it all day, so you never hear the squeak of your own soul. The roads differ in costume. The destination is the same. More dukkha. The tide rises while you stack. The heart retaliates while you starve it. The orchestra tires and the silence you fled returns larger, insulted, and collects everything you owe. So what is the alternative if not surrender? You begin where sober men have always begun. Reality first. Your approval of reality is optional. Reality's arrival is not. Marcus Aurelius wrote his manual for knights when empires leaned. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The sentence is so plain that the dramatic part of you wants to decorate it. Resist the urge. The hinge of your days is in that division. Outside events include weather, other people, the speed of line 3 at the office, and the temper of machines. Inside events include the pictures you attach to what happens, the sentences you allow to live rent-free in your head, and the degree to which you insist that the world behave according to your private contract. The pain that cannot be avoided is the price of being alive. The pain you do not need is the surcharge added by your insistence. Seneca sharpened the blade. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. You have seen this by lunchtime in any ordinary week. A look becomes a verdict. A delay becomes a catastrophe. A rumor becomes a prophecy you bow to before the day has even begun. The body pays for fictions with real chemistry. Your heart cannot tell the difference between a tiger and a thought about tigers repeated with enough color. The bloodstream will do its job either way. The question is not whether the hormones rise. The question is whether you continue to write scenes for threats that never purchased a ticket to your life. A second sober truth follows the first, whether you want it or not. Impermanence is not a glitch. It is the operating system. Heraclitus said the sentence you do not need a degree to test. Everything flows. Put your hand in the river of your days and try to hold a fistful. You will catch only the feeling of cold. That is not tragedy. That is physics. The tragedy begins when you say that the river owes you stillness. When you speak that sentence, you do not become a realist. You become a litigant who believes the judge will grant an injunction against time. Time has never lost in court. Arthur Schopenhauer, who never pretended the world was kinder than it was, gave you a draft of the weather report. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward, between pain and boredom. If that sounds bleak, do not rush to argue. Sit with it for a minute. When you are hungry, you suffer. When you are fed, you begin to fidget, unless you carry a craft larger than your appetite. If you cannot hold the ordinary with reverence, the pendulum will own you. You will demand storms to feel alive, and then accuse the sky once it rains. The fix is not to pretend the pendulum does not move. The fix is to anchor your day in a purpose that remains steady while it moves. Friedrich Nietzsche refused to dress the world in white to make it tolerable. He handed you a scarier mercy instead. Amor fati, love of fate, not resignation, not sugary acceptance. A ferocious agreement to bear what is yours without pleading to be reassigned to another life. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Keep the sentence if you plan to climb anything. The how will not flatter you. It will include weather, accidents, and the unending mediocrity of your own character on Tuesday mornings. If you insist that only a friendly how will permit you to continue, you will break. If your why is larger than comfort, the same road that produces blisters can become your teacher. Søren Kierkegaard called anxiety the dizziness of freedom. He meant that the vertigo you feel when you look over the edge of your life is not only a symptom to be medicated, it is the price of having legs. If you had no choices, you would not get dizzy. You would get depressed. The dizziness is a sign you are standing, not crawling. You can curse it. Or you can breathe and step. Step where? Into the only country where Dukkha begins to lose its power to humiliate you. The country where you take responsibility for the stories you tell yourself about what happens, and you tie your hands to a discipline that does not need permission from your feelings to begin. You may ask whether this is simply the old counsel in a new robe. Endure. Be stoic. Smile while bleeding. No. Endurance for its own sake is cosplay. Stoicism without charity to the self is theater performed for an audience that does not exist. The point is more precise. Reality is going to be reality. Your leverage is in the 3 inches between sensation and story, between impulse and act, between the thought you did not summon and the sentence you either write beneath it or delete. That is where lives are made. That is where suffering becomes either a sermon you attend daily against your will or a tutor you hire on purpose for an hour, then dismiss. What are the mistakes that keep you repeating the sermon? You lie to yourself about permanence. You say always about pleasures and never about pains. You live on a diet of absolutes. Absolutes are easy to swallow and impossible to digest. You narrate a small discomfort as a verdict on your entire week, and your body obeys the script. You demand more without specifying what more of. You punish yourself for being mortal. You treat fatigue as moral failure. You hear boredom and immediately search for a new device to inject noise into the quiet. You call desire sacred when it flatters you, and call it a trap when it demands discipline. You negotiate with time as if time had an inbox. What does a day look like when a man refuses these habits? He begins with a sentence that is not romantic but is royal. I will not argue with what is here. Not a vow to like everything, not a vow to erase grief with slogans, a refusal to burn additional energy on denying the temperature of the room. He observes his first thoughts without saluting them. He feeds his body before making any irreversible choices because he respects chemistry enough to know that fasting masquerades as philosophy. He writes down one thing he will do that is beneath his talent and above his mood. He does it. He watches his pride complain. He does not ask his pride to vote again. Then he chooses the arena where impermanence would ordinarily insult him most, and he trains there. He sets a weight that his ego hates and lifts it with honest form. The iron gives clean feedback. The rep counts do not care about theatrics. He goes for a cold walk and refuses to narrate the weather as injustice. He calls a friend because friendship is one of the few things that make the pendulum bearable, and he refuses to outsource all his comfort to screens. He reads 15 sentences of a book written by a man who did not have an app, not because old things are magic, but because old sentences survived time's teeth and therefore have calories. He keeps a ledger next to his bed with 4 small categories that prevent the pendulum from feeling like fate: effort, repair, gratitude, grief. Under effort, he writes only what was done, not what was intended. Intention is a pose. Under repair, he documents how he treated the animal called his body: sleep, food, stretching, slowness. Under gratitude, he names 3 things that will be gone soon, so that impermanence becomes a tutor in reverence. Rather than a thief, he curses at the door. Under grief, he lets one sentence be as ugly as it wants to be, and he does not publish it. Privacy dignifies pain. Publishing it quickly often turns it into an ornament. If this sounds austere, remember the men who wrote to you from worse rooms. Blaise Pascal warned you in a line that should be stamped on every entertainment device. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He did not mean that you should never dance. He meant that your refusal to sit still forces you to seek in noise what can only be found in silence. Michel de Montaigne confessed a weakness you share. My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. See how your mind earns pain it never had to pay. The remedy is not to despise imagination. It is to put imagination to work on building the only scaffolding that withstands the weather. Character. What is character in this context? Character is the pattern of choices you make when the world does not applaud and no one is keeping score. Character is the set of routines that remain even when your mood resigns. Character is the words you do not say when wounded and the acts you do not postpone when bored. Character does not protect you from dukkha. It changes how dukkha lands. Without character, suffering finds you unarmored and writes your story for you. With character, suffering knocks and is told where to sit and for how long. You will still cry. You will still miss. You will still bleed. But you will not sell your spine to avoid feeling those things. Consider how you talk to time. You speak to it as a debtor speaks to a landlord. You promise to pay next week. You plead for an extension. You hide when you cannot. Remember a less flattering sentence from Marcus Aurelius. Do not act as if you are going to live 10,000 years. He is not yelling. He is reminding you that the negotiation you believe you are conducting with time is imaginary. You think you are buying tomorrow with today's delay. You are not. You are selling the chance to be proud of yourself tonight. The buyer is not time. The buyer is the cheapest part of you. The man who purchases everything with postponement and then wonders where his life went. Where does the dissatisfaction feel most cruel? Often where you believed victory would cure you. You graduate and discover that the paper fades. You marry and discover that the companionship does not eliminate the quieter form of loneliness that sits under all human routines, like bedrock. You make money and discover what Seneca knew from the first day he counted. No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they do not have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have. You read that, and the dramatic part of you wants to object that contentment is an excuse invented by the timid. Test it honestly. Contentment does not remove ambition. Contentment removes panic from ambition. Panic is an amateur fuel. It burns hot and leaves you with less than you started with. How does a man carry heartbreak under this doctrine? He does not pretend that love should have lasted because he wanted it to. He does not make a cult out of his wound. He does not turn his loss into a personality so that strangers will clap for his endurance. He does not immediately look for a replacement life to paste over the hole. He sits in the hole until the nervous system remembers that it can survive without the picture it once carried like law. He lets grief be the only honest owner of his attention for a while, and he refuses to let grief purchase his future. Seneca again is sturdy here. What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. The sentence is not cruel. It is an equalizer. If the whole calls for tears, then your tears are not a verdict on your competence. They are proof you are here. What about injustice? Are you being told to like it? No. You are being told that your ability to fight it is proportionate to your refusal to be owned by the emotions it evokes. Anger can be a clean tool in a narrow window. Past that window, it becomes a hobby that ruins your aim. Marcus did not write to make you tame. He wrote so that you would not spend your fire on smoke. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. The instruction is both sharpened by and protected from dukkha. It refuses to tie your virtue to victory. It ties your virtue to your act in front of you. That way, when the world refuses you, you do not hand it your character to, just to force a result. At some point, you will ask whether all of this is nothing more than grown-up coping. Perhaps. What is the alternative? The teenager's project of trying to bend the world to your moods. The romantic's project of waiting for a love large enough to anesthetize you against the basic pain of being temporary. The addict's project of numbing the gap between your fantasies and your furniture. These projects feel alive for a season. They leave you with bills that look like exhaustion, resentments that look like philosophy, and wasted time disguised as biography. There is a cleaner dignity available to you. You can decide to treat dissatisfaction as a signal to re-enter the only part of the world you control, and you can build habits that refuse to evaporate when the weather changes. What small mechanics make this honest, rather than inspirational? First, you practice naming what hurts without adding litigation to the noun. I'm tired, full stop. I miss him, full stop. This outcome costs me, full stop. The litigation begins with because always and ends with and therefore never again. Litigation makes pain feel meaningful by writing a story in which you are righteous and the universe is on trial. It does not heal, it exhausts. Second, you practice acts that confirm you are the kind of man who keeps a promise even when the promise is small and invisible. Dishes, email, stretching, prayer. These are not chores. These are daily proofs that you can be trusted by the part of you that is always on the fence. Third, you rehearse impermanence in safe doses so that when it arrives, uninvited, you do not come apart. You donate a shirt you still like. You end a scroll at minute 20. You close a work session at minute 50, even though your ego wants to sprint to 90 because you crave the drama of collapse. You learn the taste of leaving while still strong. The practice inoculates you against clinging. It does not immunize you against love. It teaches you that letting go is a skill, not a superstition. Nietzsche would smile here, because amor fati is not only for earthquakes. It is for Thursday afternoons, when you choose to love the boundary that makes Friday possible. Fourth, you build a room where boredom is not a crime. Schopenhauer's pendulum will continue to swing. If you cannot allow yourself to be bored for 15 minutes without inventing a new identity, you will become a slave to novelty, and you will call the slavery curiosity. Pascal's room returns. Quiet is not punishment. Quiet is where you can audit your life without being sold a new one from every angle. If you refuse the audit, dissatisfaction will do it for you at 3 a.m, and the interest rates will be worse. Fifth, you make a practice of gratitude that is honest about change, not a list of generic blessings you think you are supposed to name. 3 items with expiration dates. This coffee while it is hot. This hand that is still strong. This laugh in this room on this night. Gratitude tied to impermanence does not license passivity. It gives you the courage to stop sprinting past the meal in front of you to beg the kitchen for another course. It trains the eyes to see the woman in front of you, the child, the friend, not as fixtures, but as flames. Flames are not owned, they are tended. Then there is the matter you avoid until the room is dark, mortality. You hover around it in jokes. You file it under later. You react with theater when it approaches. The theater is proof you have not practiced. You do not have to become morbid to be ready. You have to become accurate. Marcus Aurelius again, refusing to be poetic when plain truth will do. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Read those words as a man who has stopped arguing with what every graveyard already told him. Read them as an invitation to allocate your attention like a steward who knows the fund is finite and the beneficiaries matter. Albert Camus looked at the same fact and refused to surrender his cheer. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not because the rock is kind, because the meaning is not chained to the summit. It is forged in each step that refuses to hand its dignity to the weight. If you wait to be happy until the rock rolls differently, you will die auditioning for a life you never lived. If you decide to give your fullest presence to the task as it stands, Dukkha still visits. It no longer humiliates you. You become dangerous to it. Your willingness to work without a guarantee protects you from most of the bargaining that makes men small. You may protest that all of this feels too sober for a world that keeps marketing bliss. Of course it does. Bliss is an easy sale. Sobriety is a daily practice. The bill for bliss arrives at night when the lights are off and the audience is gone and your soul, still unsatisfied, asks whether any of this was real. The bill for sobriety is paid in the morning by a man who has learned to sit, to count, to lift, to read, to love, to laugh, to grieve, and to shut up until his chemistry is fit for speech. That man is not above dukkha. He is simply unwilling to perform it for strangers and call the performance a personality. Return at the end to where we began. Dissatisfaction. Do not treat it as a scandal. Treat it as a signal. When it rises, you can clutch, harden, or distract. Those are the reflexes of a boy. You can also notice, breathe, proportion, and act. Those are the habits of a man. Marcus gives you jurisdiction. Seneca gives you proportion. Epictetus adds the hinge in a line that has rescued thousands of dull afternoons. It is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about things. Nietzsche gives you a why that survives weather. Kierkegaard gives you permission to be dizzy and keep stepping. Schopenhauer gives you the unromantic pendulum, so you stop pretending the swing is personal. Pascal gives you the room where the audit happens before the panic. Montaigne gives you a laugh at your own alarms. Camus gives you the grin that keeps stubbornness from curdling into bitterness. You are temporary. Everything you love will change. Everything you fear will change. The change will often feel like loss because you are built to hold and to hope. Hold anyway. Hope anyway. Do not insult the world by demanding it be more than mortal before you agree to be grateful. Do not insult yourself by pretending that gratitude cancels grief. Carry both. Put them in separate pockets so you can find each when it is time. When dissatisfaction rises tomorrow, and it will, let it remind you of the one honest project a man can own. He cannot make the river still. He can become a better swimmer. He cannot keep the ice cream from melting. He can taste it before it does. He cannot command the seasons. He can plant. You will not finish this. No one does. There is no secret door where suffering ceases and the calendar applauds. There is only the dull, noble discipline of showing up for your life without the demand that it be other than what it is. When the hour is kind, be fully alive. When the hour is cruel, be fully alive. When the hour is empty, be fully alive. That is the only sentence that makes sense in a world where everything flows. The dissatisfaction does not vanish. It thins. It stops writing your script. It becomes background weather against which you practice the only freedom that ever mattered: to do the right thing, to say the true thing, to think the clean thought, to love the mortal world with open eyes, knowing it will not stay, and to thank it for coming anyway.